Hey, everybody. We're very excited for the next installment in our series where we partner with state guilds to take a closer look and dive into their current successes, challenges, and state level trends. So often we have a strong pulse on what's going on in our home states and even on the national level. And we hope these conversations can offer you with valuable insights into what's going on with maybe your next door neighbors and not so nearby states, what they may be facing. Today, we're talking to Washington. And let's meet our guest. And Shauna, because you have rotated around, now you're to the right of me. You get to go first.
Woohoo! Hello, I'm Shauna Cormier. I'm the Director of Membership and Events for the Washington Brewers Guild.
Short
and have been just over a year.
And I am mad, Shauna, we didn't actually get to say hello at the Craft Brewers Conference. I will call you out on the air right now because of that. So next time, we definitely have to have a pint together.
It was your fault, so that's fine.
I didn't even see you, though. You said you saw me.
You should have sensed me, though, from a distance. That's okay. I forgive you.
We were probably at the Silver Stamp at the exact same time.
Yeah, we probably were. I was there multiple times. So
Shauna was there a lot.
Listen, you find a good bar like that, you don't leave.
Not arguing with you. Daniel, you're up.
I'm Daniel Olson, Executive Director of the Washington Brewers Guild. Been there a little over a year now as well. So still kind of drinking out of a fire hose, but it's less intense, which is the good direction to go in. So
it's more like a garden hose now.
Yeah, a garden. There we go.
You're still here.
I'm still here. Yeah.
And Robyn, nice to have you.
Yeah, good to be here. I'm Robyn Schumacher. I'm a co-owner at Stoup Brewing in Seattle, and I'm on the board of directors for the Washington Brewers Guild.
So we're excited to learn more about what's going on in the state of Washington. And Daniel, I'd like to start with you first. How did you end up in your role as the executive director of the Guild?
How much time do we have? So my background, I come from kind of more political background. So kind of cut my teeth on a few local campaigns, was a staffer down in Olympia, and then worked in local government for a bit. And a lobbyist had sent a job opening with the Guild over, and I was like, wow, I like beer. I like small business. Like this just checks all of the boxes of what I'm looking for. And the ability to kind of go down in Olympia and kind of influence policy is really appealing to me. And so that's kind of how I linked up with the Guild. And a year and a half later, it's the most fun job I've ever had. So it's really, really a cool industry to be in. Longtime consumer, but then you kind of lift the hood up and you learn about, the 400 breweries that are in Washington, and each 400 of those have their own individual story of how they came to brew exceptional beer. So it's really, really cool spot to work.
Approximately how many of those 400 have you had time to visit over the past year and some change?
That's a good question.
All 400 is the right answer, Daniel.
Yeah, I would say 400. Yeah, I don't know.
How about you? You've been with the Guild a little bit and been in Washington State. Out of all the 400-ish in your state, how many have you visited, if you had to guess? Robyn, you need to prepare.
Did you just ask that to me? I'm sorry. You're asking.
I thought Shauna was thinking.
All of us. I was thinking. Not 400. Oh God, probably. I mean, I'm in the Seattle area, so. Sorry, the rest of the state. I love you as much as that area, but I've probably been more in that area down south. I don't know. God, if I had to put a number to it, it's got to be well over 100.
Good work. And Robyn, you've been in the industry a little bit. What's your guess?
That is a really hard question because I have free beer that comes from my taps, and so and a really comfortable couch, and I'm getting older, so I don't go to as many as I should, but I'd say well over 100 for sure. I'm from the east side of the state, so I visit there as well. So yeah, we have a lot here in Seattle. Just in our neighborhood, we have 12. So that covers quite a bit of ground.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to go far for good beer.
No.
So Shauna, let's go back to you. Tell us how you got to your position with the Guild.
Yeah. So I've lived in Seattle for, goodness, I guess about 8 years. And working in the beer industry. So here I started working in a beer bar, and then I worked at a couple breweries. And I have a little side business called Seattle Beer School. It's an events and education company. And I saw the role come up. Well, actually, this role was created because it was a long story. But so I didn't know what I was, really getting myself into. But it was created, this events and membership role, and it's been perfect. So that's how luckily the board was like, oh yeah, she can do this. So they had the faith in me. And so here we are.
Well, awesome. I know you're passionate about education just like I am. So perhaps we can have another conversation diving into more in the Seattle Beer School another time in the future.
Yeah.
So Robyn, you are not one of the employees of the guild as we discussed off air, maybe someday, but tell us a little bit more about what made you want to serve on the board of directors.
Well, we've been in business for about 10 years now, and I was approached pretty early on in my career by some people who really pushed me, but I didn't feel quite ready because, running a business is a lot of work. I still am really busy, but there came a point where it just felt like, that should be a way for me to give back. There are a lot of really, really small breweries in Washington where they're just like one owner doing a lot of the work. And so, there are 3 of us. So I felt like, I could try to represent some of those people that didn't have the time or extra energy to serve on the board. So it just felt like something I should do. And I've actually really, really enjoyed it.
No, I love that. So a question for all 3 of you. We'll dive into specifics shortly, but what are the primary objectives and goals of the guild?
Yeah, well, our mission is to protect and to promote Washington craft breweries. But it looks like, Daniel, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'd say we probably have 3 main buckets, right? So one is membership. So how are we delivering benefits to our member breweries and making sure that we can kind of build that community, which helps us in our other buckets, right? Which is legislative advocacy, which is a huge part of what we do down in Olympia, and we'll go out to DC with the Brewers Association and just advance the interests and kind of create a better business climate for small independent breweries. And a lot of that work we can do at the state level, as long as we have a great cohesive brewing community, which we are very lucky to have. And then the third bucket, I'd say, is kind of a newer bucket. And I think Sean and I have kind of labeled it as community building, but really it's trying to promote Washington beer through festivals and then identify some other ways where we can kind of market Washington beer to your everyday consumer. And so we took on the Winter Beer Fest this last December, which was our first festival in a while. And we're also doing the Washington Brewers Fest, June 22nd and 23rd at Seattle Center. And so that bucket's really new for us and really exciting of how are we building a big tent and kind of pushing more folks into being a craft beer lover. So
as a lobbyist, did you ever think you'd also run Beer Fest?
I can safely say I did not. But it is, Shauna's just knocked it out of the park. She's our lead on the festivals. And it's been a really interesting world that I don't know, I had no experience, but it's really fun, especially, the Winter Beer Fest when all the lights were on, people were there having a good time. It was a pretty rewarding feeling. So those are kind of the 3 main buckets I'd say, but
yeah,
I don't know, Shauna, if you have any.
Well, I would just add to that it's since I've been on the board, things have just evolved really rapidly. And when I started, it was during COVID. And so a lot of what the guild was doing was just kind of supporting breweries through a really difficult time. And the people we had on, working for the board were amazing in that. And obviously that provides some wear and tear. And so we got some fresh blood here, and they've really embraced this idea of community building, because I think that's where we're at in the community, is that it used to be easy, and then COVID hit and business has gotten harder. And now it's just really important that we come together again. And so the 2, Daniel and Shauna have been just amazing with that. So, I'll say it in case they don't.
Thank you, Robyn. Yeah, I think it's really cool because we're like in this interesting opportunity of really like embracing craft beer enthusiasts, right? Like that's what breweries are doing, right? They've always been really great at creating community, being community centers, being like very community focused and philanthropic. So it's cool for the guild, where I think that there was a lot of it was focused on legislative affairs and like protecting the breweries and making sure that we're giving them the resources and things that they need. And then on top of that, it's also like outreach to people who don't own breweries, that don't work for breweries, and like, how do we win them over? There's ones that are easy to win over, but then, if you look at a maturing market that we're in, we want to welcome everyone to be like, okay, maybe this wasn't something you thought that you were into, or maybe you didn't feel welcome, or maybe you thought it wasn't created for you, but it is. So I think that's a lot of what we're, kind of juggling a little bit, is this, like, we're here to take care of the breweries and our members, and, look at this wide world of people that need to love beer as much as we do.
I mean, it's all about conversations and education, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Truth.
So let's learn a little bit more about Washington. I haven't been to Washington since a really quick trip for the Washington Brewers Craft Beer Summit. Did I say it correctly? In Puyallup? Didn't get it correct. It's
so
correct.
close. So close.
No, Puyallup is the way it should be pronounced. It's Puyallup. I always say it wrong too.
Puyallup.
I didn't practice before the call, but
here.
this place in Washington State where I went for the Washington Craft Beer Summit in 2021, it was a great time, but I really didn't have enough time to explore. It's like hop off the airplane, hop in a car, go and leave. So for everyone watching and listening in the future, what is Washington State known for? If you had to pick like a one or two things, just in any industry, any vibe, wherever you want to take it, what is Washington known for?
Water.
Yeah, outdoors. Like, I mean, I think, the most beautiful state. Sorry,
are you a native?
Yes, I grew up on the east side and then now the west side. And I mean, just Washington has just some of the most beautiful terrain and diverse terrain. So that, and
yeah, agreed. The landscape is incredible. I'm from Tucson, Arizona originally, which is beautiful in its own way. But like the lush green that, at least in like Western Washington, right? And then you have like the changing landscape. So we have, how many hops do we have? Like, it's incredible that there's also that Yakima grows the most amount of hops in the world. It used to be that.
And just agriculture in general, it's a really diverse state for that. And, obviously Seattle's known for, right now politics and stuff, but
music. I thought you were going to say music.
It used to be a lot funkier, and now it's, obviously a lot tech based, and that's actually really good for business because it brings a lot of people here. But it I think we're probably pretty well known for that. Coffee.
We've got a tower that kind of looks like a spaceship. It's got a pointy.
Used to be really big. Now it just hides in the skyline.
In a prior trip, I did find to go to the top of that. Time to go to the top of that. Good time.
It is fun. It's worth it.
Yeah. And I would say, too, all of those things and the culture is, kind of a pretty rugged culture, right? So it kind of attracts a certain type of, person that's individualistic, kind of great attitude of I can do that. Why not? And I think that's probably one of the main reasons why we have over 400 breweries in the state, is just kind of that can-do attitude. And yeah, why not?
Very cool. Now, Robyn, I'm going to pass to you with a question in a second. Shauna, I think I'd like your feedback on this too. And Daniel, I'm sure you'll have something to say. But Robyn, you've been open since about 2013, right?
Yes.
So two-part question. Like, when did craft beer really, do you feel like it took off in Washington State? And you're looking at 2013 versus where we are now in 2024. What's changed the most? Like, just general observations. I know we've had a lot of changes across the industry as a whole, but Washington State specific, what stands out?
Well, obviously there's the early years of the craft beer scene in Seattle, but I would say probably about when we opened was, I think, the peak of brewery openings, I believe, around that time. So we kind of hit that sweet spot because in our neighborhood, I think there were three or four breweries, and now, like I said, there are 12, and they're all really pretty small. But since that time, it's funny because someone just recently referred to us as the OGs, and it's only been 10 years, and it's like, oh my God, I feel like we're brand new. But a lot of that is because it's just really exploded in a lot of these neighborhood breweries. So I think what's great about the Seattle area, and I assume other parts of the country, is that we just have a brewery in pretty much every neighborhood, if not more than one. And they're just these community spaces. I think we've beat out coffee shops as the community space, which I love. That's my favorite part. So
do you rub it into the coffee shops and like walk into your local Starbucks and just rub it
yeah,
into them sometimes?
yeah. Say, hey, it's so slow in here. Come to the breweries. And we've all started serving coffee too, you know, to make ends meet. So yeah, it's no problem. We don't need those coffee shops anymore.
Shauna, you've been in the industry almost as long. You know, what kind of changes have you seen across the Washington State landscape in the beer world?
I think you kind of mentioned this before, Robyn, that things aren't quite as easy, right? Maybe I think that people and I don't think that it's not like things are catastrophic. I think that we're pretty lucky here in Washington that folks are still interested, and there's diehard fans that will always be that way. But then there's also this outreach to folks that haven't, right? So I think that's the struggle, is like, how do we, do we need food? Do we have to add other than beer options? Because if you just look at like demographics across the board, people are drinking other things or not drinking at all. So I think that this appeal to more people is probably something that I've seen a lot of. And like, oh yeah, what other things can we add besides just come in and drink a beer, which yes, please, that's all I want. But what other things? Trivia? Is there like an education thing? Is there this thing happening? So I think it's just finding more stuff.
Yeah. A lot of pressure to do events and, keep people interested, and, beer slushies.
Yeah.
That's something that we thought we would never do. And it's like, well, we need to, like Shauna's saying, attract, more people, bring them to the beer and serve quality beer, but offer other things, non-alcoholic options, things like that. Change with the times. I really think it's important. And before, we would have thought that was a failure to have to serve, a beer slushie, but it's like, well, if people want it and we can make it good and fun, we'll have that.
And that's a really important point, right? Like, we, us purists, are people who are like, well, things to style and we want this and that. And as long as like you still have integrity of what you're doing, and people, that translates, right? If you're true to like who you are as your brewery, and, you're not, just doing something as like just to be trendy or whatever, also do that too. If it keeps the doors open, who cares? But I think that translates to people, right? Like if you're authentic, people are like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll go to that. Their beer is great. The slushie is great. Like whatever it is you're making, like if people are having fun, like that's kind of the most important thing, right? Tastes good, having fun. Cool. Check.
Okay, Daniel, here's your gotcha question. How do you feel about beer slushies? Are you yay or nay?
I was indifferent until I tried Stoups, and I am now on board.
I remember
you gave me one.
I forced it on him. It was our first batch. I'm like, try this.
I am firmly on board.
Yeah.
It's not something I will normally order myself, but I'm always happy to try something that's well made and people enjoy. Always.
That's the thing, right? Like my mom likes to drink beer in a frosty mug, right? Really frosty. And you can naysay that, be like, it's a Cicerone. I don't recommend putting it in a frosty mug. But it's good. She likes it. And I've done it. It tastes great. So it's like one of those things, like, don't yuck someone's yum.
I think there's something special about going to like an Applebee's and getting your beer in a frosty mug too, right? It's like part of the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's the place, Robyn or Daniel? I'm like blanking the place in Pike Place that does like a Chuck Nut Pills in a big frosty mug. It's overlooked. I'm totally blanking on the name of the place. Wow. But it's great.
Sounds delicious.
Hits the spot. I'll tell you that much.
So one thing we've already touched on is like, educating more people in Washington State about why they should drink Washington State beer. So in March, you had your pint days. Talk to us a little bit about the success of this and how it helped increase awareness.
Yeah, I can do that. This is a really cool, and a lot of states do it. A lot of guilds. It's a kind of I shouldn't say easy, but it's pretty kind of win-win for everyone. So we partnered with Grandstand to help us with this. And the folks at Blind Tiger did a beautiful job on the glassware. I think like glassware, I don't know if it's just me, but I do love collecting glassware, and so do other folks. Like it normally was in December. And it's a really cool consumer facing fundraiser. And since we started, we were new, we didn't do it in December. And we had so many folks reach out to us about it. They were like, oh no, where's 2024's pint days? So we know people love it. And it's easy for the breweries because they can order it and they can sell it. And it spreads awareness, not just of the guild, but of craft beer in Washington itself.
So how do you get your breweries to participate?
Oh, it's very easy. I just course each one of them.
All 400?
Yeah. Call them individual, show up just, with boxes like Girl Scout cookies. No, they just order online directly through Grandstand. And, there's bulk shipping locations. So if you don't want to order like the minimum, you don't have to. We have incredible, Stoup was one, in fact, where folks can go make a trip to Stoup, have a beer slushie, and pick up their pint days. Glassware.
They have a Stoup beer.
Yeah.
And also it really was easy. It's easy for the breweries to participate because you're just ordering as if you'd order glassware anytime. And the donation is built into that unless you want to add more. So it just is it's easy on the breweries. And so anytime you make it easy, people want to be a part of it.
Which is like a goal, right? Of a lot of the fundraising that we do, right? There's some that take a little more lift from member breweries. But this one's like an easy lift for people because it's like, oh yeah, I can order just one-stop shop and then the proceeds are already go to the guild. This is amazing.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Cool. And another cool thing I saw that you all have coming up is Westies with our besties, which I can just say that over and over again. It's your guild collab that's coming out soon. And I have two questions for you. First, how can I get my hands on a can here in Virginia? And second, just tell me more about this initiative.
Well, you have to know someone, first of all, to get that can, and it's technically illegal. So I don't know what's going to happen, Andrew, but I'm sure that something magic can happen.
Just call it lab samples.
Yeah. Yeast lab samples. That's exactly right. So there is a lab in Virginia, right?
I'm sure there's a lab in Virginia for sure.
Great.
Right next door. Yeah.
Yeah. I can give you the address later.
Perfect.
So I guess who thought of the name? I mean, it's probably been used somewhere before, but who wants to take credit for that?
That's not
it was me. I mean, Westies with their besties. I think that's, besties is just something I like saying anyway. So no, this is kind of an evolution of something that we've done in the past where came out of COVID, actually, where a lot of our allied members would sponsor this, throw in discounted or donated goods like supplies, hops, malt, yeast, labels, label design. And so you can get almost everything either pretty deeply discounted or free. And it's a collab that could have been done individually. Because of COVID, we couldn't be together. So that was great. And then kind of the evolution of it, we're like, I think that we can get back together now pretty safely. So let's actually divide it by region. So 5 regions of Washington and a host brewery in each one. Stoup is one.
We're doing everything.
You are. And that's why you're so busy because you're supporting the guild too much.
You're the OGs.
Just enough, I should say.
Yeah.
And so each host brewery, along with all the participating breweries, made a West Coast IPA. And so the release is next week. There's some release parties happening, and they're all going to be judged by a panel of professional judges. And the winner gets the most prestigious of awards during the Washington Brewers Fest.
You got to give us a little more about what that award entails. Is it a secret?
Just bragging rights.
Oh, cool.
Like I made the best West Coast IPA. I mean, first of all, I just will always want to drink a West Coast IPA. But yeah, that's pretty much what the award entails.
Maybe like a wrestler belt too.
We did talk a lot about the wrestler belt. Yeah,
you could throw in.
I could DIY that.
Hold up on stage and brag about.
Yeah. And then, what's been really fun and like a lot of the feedback we got was like, how cool to get together with like my friends in each region. Just like,
we on the Puget Sound region that we hosted, you never know how many people are going to be involved, but it was 23 breweries. And so we, met before to collaborate on a beer, which if you've ever done that with 23 brewers, it's pretty difficult. But it turned out to be super fun. And then we had like a little potluck brew day and nobody brewed except our brewers, but we had a good time. And I got to meet a lot of people that I hadn't met before, which is pretty rare these days. So it was super fun.
Oh, so I like that for a couple of different reasons. First is just bringing people together, which is amazing that, this collaboration beer is bringing your industry together who doesn't always have the opportunity because we're so busy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But second, I mean, Westies, it's the West Coast, it's going to be great. It's going to educate consumers too about what you're doing. So I'd love to kind of pivot it a little bit and talk to me about how you're getting all the beer drinkers in Washington State aware of this. And as excited as, all of you, of course.
Well, I'd say one way is that because we have so many breweries participating, the beer will be at all of these brewery tap rooms. So it's just exposure throughout the state. And I mean, thanks to Daniel and Shauna, we have participation from every region, and that's pretty tough to do because, like Daniel said, we do have some independent regions that haven't necessarily been that involved with the guild. And so this is a really great way kind of to show them how we collaborate and also expose the guild, what we're doing with the guild to the customers through the tap rooms.
So bringing people together, I think that's something, a lot of states struggle with. A lot of it is you talk to the people, the other brewers in your city, but you don't often talk to the people in other regions across your state. In addition to initiatives like this, are there any other ways you're getting people in different parts of the state to connect?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one, and this is a huge credit to the staff before us and the board. They started the Washington Craft Beer Summit, I think in 2019 was their first year, maybe 2018. And that was kind of the one event that would bring everybody from across the state together for a day, for a night before, and then a day for educational seminars, networking, talking to vendors and folks like that. And I think we've just seen a tremendous amount of success with that event as it's progressed. And that's kind of a great way to get everybody or as many people as possible under one roof. And then just kind of let it go from there. That was one of the coolest things of, kind of hosting these meetings in the Craft Beer Summit is once you get everybody in a room, they'll take it from there. And it's fun to see them all catch up or meet each other, talk about what they're doing. Sometimes they may gripe about the same issues that they may be facing. So it's just a really cool way that we're able to kind of facilitate those conversations.
Very cool, Daniel. Now let's talk a little bit about Fest, and we'll continue with you on this one, Daniel, because you got thrown into the Fest world after all your time.
I may kick it to Shauna though, because she's the lead on the Fest.
So give us a little insight, like the goals of these festivals. You have one coming up, a big one in June. Talk to us about how they work and why they're important to the guild.
Yeah, and so to kind of rewind a bit, there was another organization that we worked pretty closely with, which was the Washington Beer Commission. And so they were created out of the state legislature and the Department of Agriculture. Their mission was to promote Washington beer. And the way that they did that was host beer festivals from, throughout the region with the goal of marketing Washington beer. A couple of those events are really nostalgic, and that would be the Winter Beer Fest and the Washington Brewers Fest. And so the commission, after COVID, they couldn't host events, just ran into, a spot where, well, we weren't able to make money. So we've got to, kind of close the doors. And so our board decided to, hey, there's clearly a lot of nostalgia and a lot of brewer community support to keep these two events going. Let's see if we can do it. And so that's kind of the background story of how the guild kind of took on those two events. This Washington Brewers Fest is a beast for sure. We've got over 80 breweries, wineries, cideries. They're going to be there. We're hoping for a great crowd, great weather.
Where is it at, Daniel?
It's going to be at the Fisher Pavilion in Seattle Center. So it's the lawn right in front of the Space Needle. So spectacular venue and just a great lineup of entertainment, beers, and yeah, it's going to be a party. It's going to be
great. VIPs get to go up in the Space Needle and drink beer.
Yeah, maybe we
roll that in up in rockets.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
But none of this would have happened if we hadn't have found Shauna to take the lead on organizing. And just we have no idea how to do these events. Let's just go figure it out. And Shauna has. So we were really, really lucky.
Well, I'm lucky to be here. I think that it feels like there's a lot of pressure for these two events too. I'll just be honest, because they've been successful for a long time. And people have been going to them for years. So especially for, like, in Winter Beer Fest went really well, and it was different than in years past. And I think that's the hard thing, is how do you balance tradition and nostalgia with, like, we have to change or we're not going to survive. Like, festivals as we know it are changing and evolving. And even like the biggest beer fest in the country, the Great American Beer Festival, is changing. They're seeing dwindling numbers, not dwindling. That's perhaps a very dramatic word. But if you don't change and evolve, then, you'll be a dinosaur. So it's really cool opportunity, and it's so exciting to be able to be kind of given these things and being like, okay, well, what can we do to make sure that people still want to come? And we changed a lot for Washington Brewers Fest. It used to be at this beautiful park called Merrimore Park, and it used to be during Father's Day weekend. And we changed both. So that was kind of a risk, but I think ultimately a good decision for both. And I think that we'll be able to really draw a crowd that is different, and hopefully still serve those that are the ones that have been going for 14 years. We have a dedicated following, and that's incredible. So just to make sure that we don't lose those people, but also open our arms to those that perhaps wouldn't have come otherwise.
So beer fests are definitely changing. You talk about how your fests are, evolving over time, and that the same as even last year. What are some of the changes you're making to attract a broader and greater audience?
I mean, honestly, by moving it to Seattle Center, I think that was a big step. Merrimore is gorgeous and beautiful and a park, right? And so is Seattle Center, but public transport is superior, which I think is huge, right? Folks don't have to drive home after being in a beer festival. Centrally located, which, we do represent the entire state. So it's challenging, to have it in Seattle when not all of our members are in Seattle area. But I think that choice is really helpful to snag those that perhaps didn't want to make the drive to Merrimore, right? They're like, oh, I can just jump on light rail or take a bus. Seattle Center is historic and incredible for that sort of thing. Music, sort of entertainment, is a piece of like making it diverse and fun, and like, there's kind of a festival sort of band that maybe you can imagine has been at a lot of festivals, and just kind of look outside the box, see what's happening out there, and also providing alternative beverages. Breweries are our bread and butter, and so that's predominantly who's going to be there. But we have about 5 or 6 cideries and 3 wineries. So like for folks who perhaps can't drink, or, just kind of diversifying a little bit.
Yeah, let's follow that a little bit. What other trends are you seeing across Washington State? I know nationwide we're seeing a lot of talk of, diversifying your product line, but is there anything unique to Washington State that you all are experiencing, or just any unique observations that you see from your perspective?
I'd probably defer to Robyn, just being as business owner, probably closest to that.
You mean on the beverage front?
Yeah, any unique trends, take it however you like.
Yeah, well, from the beer front, we know those trends, but I would say, a lot of us are making the seltzers. I wouldn't say that they're a huge seller. On draft, especially, I think people associate seltzers with cans and being on the beach and stuff like that. But I think people have given into the idea that we can make a good seltzer. Why buy it from someone? If some people want it, we can make that. On the beer front, definitely moving to much lighter beers. IPAs still are king from a volume standpoint, but we're seeing our Pilsners and other lagers overtaking sales for sure, which is super fun, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like lagers in general, or like you're saying light beers, so like lighter beers, but like I think especially a lot of things I've been hearing are people developing their lager programs, and like, which just shows, I think, like a maturing sort of group. Not like you have to be mature to make lagers. People have been making lagers forever. But I think that is also a thing that I'm seeing. We'll see more and more really incredible lager, Pilsners, all those, anything under the umbrella of lager.
Yeah. A lot of that is, the public needed to accept that as well, because, it took a while to get over our fear of brewing lagers, because then people just associate it with Budweiser or something like that. We were trying to differentiate ourselves And now we can differentiate by saying, oh, we can just make that as well as you can. We can do it. We can do everything. So
your coffee's even better than Starbucks, right?
yeah, exactly.
And I feel like storytelling has a lot to do with it, right? Like, yeah, we can have a, this is like a Budweiser. Let's say like a Douglas lager. I'm just using as an example, like just a one sort of Washington made Budweiser equivalent, for lack of a better word. You can say like, this was made here, with our water, our hops, our malts. And I think that goes a long way for people, consumers who not only vote, who pay for things because, and also you should vote, who pay for things because it's good, but also pay for things because it's like the right choice, right? There's like this moral sort of judgment that goes into purchasing things. I think that's probably not just a Washington thing, but there are a lot of very progressive folks here who think like that.
So I'd love to learn a little bit more about Washington. I mean, we obviously know that hops are grown a ton in your state, but are there any other unique ingredients that we can find in Washington that you all are using in beers or other beverages?
Well, a lot of our grain actually comes from here as well. So you can brew an entire beer with just Washington grown products, but also we're really close to, fruit orchards. If you just go to Eastern Central Washington, it's just full of different varieties of fruits. So a lot of people are using that. Gosh, so much. I mean, like I said, we just have everything here. It's the most beautiful.
You're right though about like agricultural, like just like fruit trees or like any sort of like, I mean, apples obviously are a really huge Washington thing, but just like apricots, peaches, plums.
See, I would have never known half these things you're saying right now.
It's incredible. Like, I think I'm completely ruined when it comes to, I'm part of a CSA from Collins Family Farms. And they do trees, like, so anything that's like grown on a tree. Right. And I'm ruined, like any sort of apple or peach. I'm just like, okay, well, I'm never going to find anything that good again.
And I just throw in as a non-brewer, we have the most glaciers in the lower 48 states. I mean, our water.
That's the trivia I want right now, Daniel.
Water around.
I think we're also the largest lentil growing state in the nation. So there you go. I
didn't know that.
Donna, you're supposed to one up them. They keep getting weirder and weirder.
We also have a creepy little troll that's under a bridge.
I have a picture of that somewhere.
Yeah.
So Daniel, we'll kick it back to you and get a little more serious, I guess, for a sec. You've been doing this a little over a year. What are some of the greatest strides forward Washington Beer has made since you've kind of taken over? And what are some of the legislative hurdles you're still working to overcome?
Yeah, I would say if you're familiar with the adage, defense wins championships. I think that's kind of been the motto this past year, particularly down in Olympia on legislation that's being considered. So there's been a couple kind of troublesome bills that we've been engaged on that if passed, they would have, I think, damaged the ability to do business as a brewery in Washington State. And that's obviously not what we want to have happen. In particular, there's a bill out there that would lower the blood alcohol content for what's considered a DUI from 0.08 to 0.05. And that one's troubling, and we could go on for hours about why that's so. I think what's behind that, though, is a little bit more concerning, and it's a growing like temperance movement in the legislature, and we're seeing a bipartisan movement there. And I think it's imperative upon me and the guild and our brewery members to kind of demonstrate that, one, beer is the drink of moderation. Our breweries are closing at 10. We're not the ones who are over serving at all. And people should be able to responsibly enjoy, a craft beer. And so that's kind of one of the biggest headwinds that I think we're facing, is just kind of a growing neo-prohibitionist movement that kind of crosses the political aisle. And so that's a little concerning. I think in terms of what we want to move forward, I think just access to market issues are huge for us right now. Of how are we making sure that, no matter what size you are, you have a fair shot at getting access to market and growing your business. One thing that I think we're really sensitive on as staff and the board is the issues that we're taking on. They impact every single brewery, no matter what your size is. And that's really important. We can justify why we're fighting for or against a certain piece of legislation, because here's how it will impact you no matter where you're at. And so I think just continuing to drive, access to market, making sure that we can, kind of have a little bit more flexibility, maybe, I don't know. I'd probably say something I'd regret, but yeah, I think just a little bit more flexibility. We come from a state that is pretty progressive, but we have pretty heavy-handed enforcement from the Liquor and Cannabis Board, which is the government agency that regulates us. And I think just continuing to advocate for pushing more towards an educational approach rather than a enforcement approach is beneficial for all of us.
No, thanks for sharing all that. How is cannabis and alcohol playing out together?
That's a great question. So cannabis was legalized, I think it's been about 10 years now, maybe a little bit more. And they're still dealing with it. There is so much unrest and a bunch of stakeholders coming in, and you've got, large corporations coming in, fighting against the smaller grower. I mean, it is a mess in every sense of the word. And I think that's where a lot of the Liquor and Cannabis Board's focus has been over the past 10 years. How do we create this market? How do we regulate it appropriately, equitably, to where there really hasn't been much crossover? I think there was a bill last year that would ban THC-infused alcohol drinks, which I think is illegal federally anyways. And that was kind of the only crossover issue I think I saw come across. I think by and large, the focus has just been how do we make this a market that's well regulated and equitable for all with relation to cannabis.
No, thanks for sharing all that. Sean and Robyn, anything to add on that?
No, he covered all of that. Daniel is the expert there.
So I guess, Robyn, then we'll switch it from like the brewery perspective, like, talking to other brewery owners, managers, people across the state. What challenges do you feel that breweries are facing these days?
I think the major challenge is just cost of doing business is going way, way up. And so margins are slim. And I think this last winter is probably the hardest winter we've had in 10 years. And we know that's across the board for other breweries and restaurants. And I mean, it's pretty clear that there are quite a few breweries that are just hanging on by a thread. And so just how can we bring costs down? Labor cost is really high. We're a progressive state, so we have a really high minimum wage, which we support. But that obviously puts pressure on, people who aren't making minimum wage. And so it just raises the cost of doing business in general. So I think that's really the challenge. And it is just a maturing market, and there are fewer younger people drinking beer. And so that's a challenge for us. I'm a true believer that beer will always survive because it just has for a long time. But at this point, it's a struggle because there are a lot of other options.
It makes me think, Robyn, about when you talk about like cost of labor, right? Because we do have a high minimum wage, and within this sort of like, craft beer movement, right? Getting people to work at a brewery, like you can't just be like, you're just lucky to work at this really cool brewery now. It's like you have to, and this is probably not just a Washington thing, but, healthcare and having folks like be able to have like PTO and like live like creating a working environment that is sustainable. So you're not having to so your turnover rate, not just any sort of brewery, like that's also like a maturing thing that's happening is like the cost of everything is so high. And you also really want really good people to work for you. And how do you keep them? I think that's something that a lot of people have talked about across the board too, is like, all right, now we've been around for a while. Like, how do we now keep the good people so that they don't join a different industry, right?
In CBP, there's somewhat of an ongoing joke, and I'm sure it's in other industries as well. It's not just about pizza parties. You have to do so much more to keep people, engaged. It's about all those benefits you're talking about. And Daniel, I know we had mentioned on the first call we got to know each other, like you're kind of trying to get behind a few of the workforce development bills in the state.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we can add our, name to a bill that would alleviate some of the, housing cost issues or, one thing we're seeing, right, of the San Juan Islands is up in Northwest Washington, just these gorgeous islands set in Puget Sound. They have a cost of living issue where the breweries there, the staff can't afford to live there. And when you're on an island, that's problematic because you're not going to take the ferry every day in and out of work. It's just not sustainable. And so the same is for Leavenworth, Washington, which is over in the mountains. And so kind of looking at some of the bills that are coming through, like one, workforce development is fantastic, but then two, affordable housing, I think, is becoming more and more important for us to maybe not lead the charge, but just be a voice of saying, hey, this is something that our industry is dealing with as well. And it would make it better for our, employees and our member breweries if, we can find ways to lower that cost of living.
For sure.
No, so without a doubt. So what are you all most excited about right now? Let's kind of switch to a positive note, looking at the future of beer in Washington. What's getting you out of bed every day and keeping you up at night? In a good way, not, those challenges we all deal with sometimes.
Have we mentioned the Washington Brewers Festival, June 22nd, 23rd at Seattle Center?
Daniel, how many people do you all expect to attend that one?
I think, where are we at, Shauna? Probably
we're estimating anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000 attendees.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What's so crazy about that, in the heyday of this festival, they had upwards of 30,000.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
It is. I mean, I would say from my standpoint, what I'm excited about is that I do see the quality of beer just across the board. It's so good right now, even small breweries where before, when we were first starting, you might go to a brewery and it's just kind of a risk. And it's like, do I want to spend my money on this risk? But now I feel comfortable going in just about any brewery in Washington. And it's like, I know I'm going to get good beer. And we just have a new generation of people who are doing things differently, and they're going to change the face of the beer industry. And that I'm really excited about that. I don't like to be called the OG, but I started as an OG because I started older, so it's fine. I'm just really excited for, a lot of the new young people coming along.
I have to agree with that. I'm really excited about that. And I'm also really excited about, it feels like we're in this really cool kind of, we have been this kind of crossroads a little bit. And it feels like that breweries want to be more involved and like get together and collaborate. And so that feels really exciting to me, that there's this sort of, and maybe it was a little bit of maybe got some of this from the guild collab and like a little bit of a risk by changing it, kind of a small risk, but like people were like, yes, we love that. And it's like, oh, cool. People like getting together and talking about it. And the guild maybe will become something that's important to people so that we keep gaining members, because the more members we have, the stronger we are. And I feel that's what's exciting to me, is that it feels like we're getting stronger, which is what we need. So that is really exciting to me.
So cool, and great work to everyone involved. Now, as we wind down, I have one final question. Brewers often have short attention spans sometimes. So if they watch today's conversation and they only took away one thing about Washington State, what would you want them to remember about beer in Washington State? And Pam, because, well, I didn't say Pam. I was reading my text there.
Pam's always on her mind. It's okay.
Anyways, Pam's on my mind. Okay, Robyn, because you went last to start, you get to go first to end.
What I want people to know about Washington, because sorry, this is not a long answer, but we have a lot of small breweries. So on the national scale, people don't always know about us. So I want them to know that it's worth a trip to Washington to try the beer, because it may not be distributed into your state, but it's really, really good beer.
I like it. Daniel, your turn.
I think Robyn just stole I was going to say, come to Washington.
You have to think of a new one.
Come to Washington. Yeah. What's the food thing? The 3 Michelin stars. That's Washington craft beer.
Yes, it is. I guess I would just say that there's a long history of brewing here in Washington, and there's so much new history happening. So it feels like it's been going on for a long time, and there's also so much exciting new things that are happening too. Also, it's so gorgeous. The air smells so good.
The air smells good. That's what
Water is good. The air is good. The beer is great.
Glaciers. And Robyn, what did you say that the weird lentils is it lentils you mentioned earlier?
Quote me on this, but I think we are the largest lentil growing region in the state.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to forget that one.
I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Well, Shauna, Daniel, and Robyn, it's been so great learning more about each of you and what's going on in Washington State. Sounds like you all are doing amazing things. I know I'm due a visit before too long, so we'll have to have pints again. But thanks again for being here today, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah,
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks,
Bye,
Andrew.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.